For most of the known galaxy, Earth was little more than a distant world on the edge of civilized space. The great alien empires controlled thousands of star systems, commanded massive fleets, and ruled over countless species. Humanity, by comparison, was young and small. They traded peacefully, respected galactic laws, and rarely involved themselves in conflicts between larger powers. Many alien leaders considered humans harmless and unimportant. Some even mocked them for spending more resources on science, education, and exploration than on military expansion. Yet behind Earth's calm appearance was a people who had learned many lessons from their own long and difficult history. Human leaders understood that peace was valuable only when it could be protected. Because of this, Earth quietly maintained strong defenses while presenting itself as a cooperative member of the galaxy. For decades, relations remained stable, and many believed humanity would continue growing peacefully among the stars. Then everything changed. Far across the galaxy, the powerful Varkesh Dominion began spreading alarming reports throughout the Galactic Council. According to their intelligence services, humanity had secretly violated several galactic treaties and was developing weapons capable of destroying entire planets. The accusations appeared shocking. Reports claimed that hidden human laboratories were building forbidden technologies that could threaten every species in existence. Evidence was presented to council members, and fear quickly spread. News networks repeated the claims every hour. Citizens on hundreds of worlds watched broadcasts showing images, documents, and recordings that seemed to prove humanity's guilt. Few people questioned whether the evidence was real. The Varkesh Dominion had long been one of the most influential powers in the galaxy, and many trusted its words without hesitation. On Earth, leaders were stunned. President Kim Ji-won immediately denied the accusations and demanded a full investigation. Human scientists reviewed the evidence and discovered numerous inconsistencies. Many documents appeared altered. Several images were clearly manipulated. Yet whenever Earth tried to present these findings, major news channels ignored them. The public had already accepted the story they were told. Fear often moved faster than truth. Within weeks, pressure grew inside the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species argued that humanity posed an unacceptable danger. They claimed that waiting any longer would risk the safety of the entire galaxy. During emergency meetings held on the Council's massive orbital station, voices rose in anger and fear. Some delegates called for sanctions. Others demanded military intervention. Human Ambassador Lee Hanna stood before the council chamber and pleaded for reason. She calmly explained that Earth had broken no treaties and welcomed independent inspections. She asked only for fairness and evidence. Her words echoed through the enormous hall, but many delegates refused to listen. Fear had already shaped their decisions. Behind closed doors, powerful leaders pushed for harsher measures. Eventually, the final vote arrived. Across thousands of worlds, citizens watched the historic session. One by one, council members cast their votes. When the count ended, the result shocked humanity. The Galactic Council officially declared Earth a potential existential threat to galactic security. The ruling authorized immediate military action if humanity failed to comply with strict demands. Earth was given 30 days to surrender all advanced military assets, open every defense installation to foreign control, and accept permanent monitoring by Council forces. The terms were impossible. No sovereign world could accept such conditions and remain independent. The message was clear. Humanity was being asked to surrender without a fight. On Earth, disbelief quickly turned into concern. Massive demonstrations filled cities around the planet. Some citizens demanded resistance. Others hoped diplomacy could still prevent war. President Kim Ji-won gathered military commanders, scientists, and political leaders for emergency meetings. Among them was Defense Minister Park Jae, a calm and experienced strategist who had spent decades studying galactic politics. He warned that the situation was far worse than many realized. According to intelligence reports, coalition fleets were already mobilizing near human borders. The Council's ultimatum was likely only a formality. Preparations for invasion had begun long before the vote. Meanwhile, on distant worlds, enormous armadas assembled. Shipyards worked around the clock. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, and support vessels gathered into formations unlike anything seen in centuries. Officially, these fleets existed to enforce galactic law. Unofficially, many commanders expected a short campaign ending with Earth's complete surrender. Human military analysts watched sensor feeds showing fleet after fleet moving toward their territory. The numbers were overwhelming. Entire sectors seemed filled with enemy ships. News of the approaching armadas spread across Earth. Families followed updates every day. Schools discussed emergency procedures. Governments prepared shelters and evacuation plans. Yet despite the growing danger, humanity did not panic. There was fear, certainly, but there was also determination. Human history contained countless examples of surviving impossible odds. Many remembered those lessons. As the deadline approached, Ambassador Lee Hanna continued her efforts. She met with representatives from dozens of species, searching for allies willing to reconsider the Council's decision. A few listened. Most did not. The Varkesh Dominion's influence reached deep into galactic politics. Every attempt at negotiation seemed to fail before it truly began. Behind the scenes, however, several independent investigators uncovered troubling details. Some pieces of evidence against Earth appeared to originate from unknown sources connected to Varkesh intelligence networks. Before these findings could be publicly released, the investigators mysteriously disappeared. Their reports vanished from official databases. The truth was being buried. 20 days remained, then 15, then 10. Every passing day brought more enemy fleets closer to human space. Long-range sensors detected enormous formations gathering near key hyperspace routes. Military experts estimated that the coalition force would outnumber humanity by at least 20 to 1. Publicly, Earth continued requesting peaceful dialogue. Privately, leaders prepared for the worst. Deep beneath government complexes, secure meetings continued day and night. Discussions centered around options that had remained hidden for generations. Only a handful of people knew the full truth. Even many senior officials were unaware of certain classified programs buried within humanity's history. 5 days before the deadline, Defense Minister Park Jae entered a heavily guarded facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. There he met with several high-ranking officers and scientists. Waiting inside the chamber was a sealed authorization system untouched for over 200 years. The room remained silent as biometric scans confirmed their identities. One by one, encrypted keys were entered into the system. Ancient security protocols awakened. Hidden databases opened. Information long forgotten by the public appeared on massive holographic displays. Some of the younger officers stared in disbelief. Entire sections of human history had been concealed from almost everyone. Records described preparations made by previous generations who had feared exactly this scenario. They had predicted that one day humanity might face united opposition from more powerful civilizations. Rather than relying on hope, they had spent centuries preparing. Above them, the galaxy moved closer to war. Coalition admirals finalized invasion plans. News networks predicted Earth's surrender was inevitable. Political leaders celebrated what they believed would be a swift resolution to the crisis. None of them knew what had just been awakened beneath Earth's oceans. On the final night before the ultimatum expired, President Kim Ji-won stood inside the secure chamber and reviewed the classified reports. The information confirmed what only a few now understood. Humanity had never intended to dominate the galaxy, but it had quietly prepared for survival. As warning alarms echoed through military command centers across the planet and enemy fleets crossed into staging positions near human territory, the president looked at the gathered officers and gave a single order that would soon change the fate of the galaxy. Activate Protocol Leviathan. Across hidden facilities scattered throughout human-controlled space, dormant systems suddenly came to life, and far beyond the sight of every alien fleet waiting to attack Earth, something enormous began to awaken in the darkness. As the words, "Activate Protocol Leviathan," spread through the highest levels of Earth's command network, hidden systems that had remained silent for more than 2 centuries suddenly came alive. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, massive doors opened inside underground facilities that had never appeared on any official map. Ancient reactors powered up. Long-forgotten shipyards lit their halls with bright white light. Across distant asteroid belts, secret stations emerged from camouflage fields that had hidden them from every scanner in the galaxy. Automated factories began moving for the first time in generations. The people operating these facilities had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, knowing that one day humanity might need defenses that the rest of the galaxy never knew existed. President Kim Ji-won watched reports arrive from dozens of hidden locations as operation centers confirmed successful activation. Around her stood Defense Minister Park Jae, Ambassador Lee Hanna, and several senior commanders who were finally learning the full truth. Even they were shocked by the scale of what previous generations had built. For centuries, human leaders had quietly invested resources into secret projects hidden far beyond public knowledge. They had not done it for conquest. They had done it because history taught them that peace could disappear without warning. The leaders who created Protocol Leviathan had believed that if the galaxy ever united against humanity, Earth would need a final shield. That shield was now waking up. In one of the deepest command facilities beneath Earth's oceans, Admiral Kang Dae sat before a giant holographic display. He had spent years overseeing classified military projects without knowing exactly when they would be needed. His face remained calm as thousands of status reports appeared around him. Fleet groups designated Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and dozens of others confirmed readiness. Hidden fuel depots activated. Supply networks awakened. Secret communication arrays linked systems scattered across human-controlled space. The Admiral studied every report carefully. Humanity had only one chance to survive what was coming. There could be no mistakes. While Earth prepared, the Galactic Coalition moved closer. Coalition fleets continued gathering near human borders, confident that victory was certain. News channels across alien worlds broadcast images of the enormous armadas. Military analysts predicted that Earth would surrender before the first shot was fired. Some reporters openly mocked humanity. Others discussed how human territory would be divided after the conflict ended. The public had no reason to doubt these predictions. According to official records, humanity possessed only a modest military force. No one imagined that hidden fleets existed beyond known space. Even many human citizens believed their situation was hopeless. Yet strange reports soon began appearing across coalition intelligence networks. Long-range scanners detected unusual energy signatures near abandoned regions of space. Several reconnaissance ships investigating the signals vanished without explanation. At first, commanders dismissed the incidents as technical errors. Then more reports arrived. Entire sectors once considered empty suddenly showed traces of heavy industrial activity. Sensors detected movement around remote asteroid fields that should have contained nothing of value. Coalition analysts struggled to explain the findings. Their confusion grew every hour. Far from Earth, inside a classified shipyard hidden within a giant hollow asteroid, Commander Choi Min watched as hundreds of massive vessels prepared for departure. The enormous hangars stretched for kilometers in every direction. Workers moved efficiently along platforms surrounding warships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These vessels were larger than most coalition battleships. Their armor contained materials developed through generations of secret research. Their engines could achieve speeds thought impossible by galactic standards. Yet the most impressive systems remained hidden beneath their hulls. Humanity had spent centuries improving technologies that were never publicly revealed. Choi Min walked through the command deck of one giant vessel and felt the faint vibration of reactors coming online. Around him, crews completed final preparations. Many of them had trained their entire lives for this mission. Some had never even seen Earth. They were descendants of families assigned to secret programs generations earlier. For them, Protocol Leviathan was not just an emergency plan. It was their purpose. Across dozens of hidden systems, thousands of ships prepared to leave concealment. Massive carrier groups emerged from underground caverns beneath distant moons. Dreadnoughts powered up inside hollow planets converted into hidden fortresses. Entire fleets waited silently for orders. Humanity's secret shield was far larger than anyone had imagined. As these preparations continued, Lee Hanna received disturbing intelligence from covert contacts within the Galactic Council. Evidence had surfaced suggesting that the accusations against Earth had been deliberately manufactured. Several council officials privately admitted that they had voted out of fear rather than certainty. Unfortunately, the momentum toward war had become too powerful to stop. Even if the truth emerged now, coalition fleets were already moving. Events had gone too far. Lee Hanna shared the information with President Kim Ji-won, who listened quietly before turning her attention back to military reports. The president understood that proving humanity's innocence might eventually matter, but survival came first. If Earth fell, the truth would die with it. 3 days after Protocol Leviathan's activation, coalition scouts made a discovery that sent shockwaves through military command centers. Near the edge of an uncharted nebula, long-range sensors detected an enormous concentration of ships. Initial estimates suggested several hundred vessels. Follow-up scans revealed thousands. The discovery created immediate panic among intelligence officers. Fleet commanders demanded explanations. Where had these ships come from? Why had no one detected them before? Emergency meetings spread throughout coalition headquarters. Some argued that the contacts were sensor malfunctions. Others feared they represented an unknown alien power. Before answers could be found, additional reports arrived from different sectors. More hidden fleets were appearing everywhere. Entire formations emerged from regions previously believed empty. The impossible truth slowly became clear. The mysterious ships were human. Deep inside Coalition Command, senior officers stared at holographic displays showing fleet after fleet appearing across strategic locations. The numbers grew larger every hour. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Shock replaced confidence. The assumptions that had shaped the entire campaign were collapsing. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had simply been hiding. On Earth, the public finally learned part of the truth. President Kim Ji-won addressed the planet through a global broadcast. She explained that humanity possessed defensive resources not previously disclosed for security reasons. She reassured citizens that Earth would not face the coming storm alone. Across cities, colonies, and orbital habitats, people watched with growing hope as images of newly revealed fleets appeared on their screens. For the first time since the crisis began, fear started giving way to determination. Families who had expected defeat now saw evidence that humanity had prepared far more carefully than anyone realized. The announcement spread quickly across the galaxy. Alien governments reacted with disbelief. News networks interrupted regular programming to cover the developing situation. Analysts struggled to explain how humanity had concealed such vast military forces for centuries. Some accused Earth of deception. Others questioned why the Galactic Council had failed to detect the preparations. Public confidence in official intelligence began to weaken. Meanwhile, Admiral Kang Dae continued organizing the largest military mobilization in human history. He knew that revealing the fleets was only the beginning. The coalition still possessed enormous numerical advantages. Victory was far from guaranteed. Yet, for the first time, humanity had a fighting chance. As hidden armadas moved into position, encrypted orders flowed across thousands of vessels. Captains reviewed battle plans. Fighter squadrons prepared for launch. Supply ships distributed resources throughout the growing fleet network. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as more human warships appeared every day. Then, only hours before the Galactic Council's ultimatum officially expired, an event occurred that changed everything. Long-range sensors across coalition space detected a massive hyperspace disturbance unlike anything previously recorded. The disturbance expanded rapidly across multiple sectors. Scientists rushed to analyze the readings. Military commanders demanded immediate reports. Moments later, the answer arrived. Emerging from deep space beyond every known border came the largest concentration of human warships ever detected. Thousands upon thousands of colossal vessels appeared in perfect formation, stretching across the darkness like a steel ocean. Their arrival was so vast that sensor networks initially struggled to calculate their numbers. On command bridges throughout the coalition, Officers stared in disbelief. The invasion that had seemed certain only days earlier suddenly looked far less certain. And as the gigantic armada continued emerging from hyperspace, Admiral Kang Dae quietly gave the order that would begin humanity's response to the greatest threat it had ever faced. The appearance of humanity's hidden armada sent waves of shock across the galaxy, but the leaders of the Galactic Coalition refused to retreat. Many believed that Earth was using a final bluff to avoid destruction. Coalition admirals convinced themselves that even if humanity possessed more ships than expected, the combined strength of dozens of alien empires would still guarantee victory. Orders were issued across thousands of vessels. The invasion would proceed. As coalition fleets crossed into human-controlled space, millions of soldiers prepared for what they expected to be a short and decisive war. On Earth, however, Admiral Kang Dae watched the enemy advance with calm confidence. He stood inside the command center of the massive flagship Dawn Shield while holographic displays showed every movement of the approaching armadas. Around him, officers monitored thousands of human vessels positioned across multiple systems. Commander Choi Min coordinated fleet deployments from a nearby station, while Defense Minister Park Jae remained in constant contact with President Kim Ji-won on Earth. Every piece of humanity's secret defense network was now active. The moment they had prepared for over 2 centuries had finally arrived. The first battle began near the outer edge of the Sirius Corridor, one of the main hyperspace routes leading toward Earth. Coalition commanders expected only light resistance. Instead, they found an organized defensive wall of human warships waiting for them. Hundreds of sleek destroyers, cruisers, and battleships formed perfect formations around fortified stations hidden within the asteroid fields. The alien fleets immediately opened fire. Thousands of energy beams crossed the darkness. Missiles filled space like streams of burning light. Explosions erupted across the battlefield as the first ships were destroyed. For several minutes, both sides exchanged devastating attacks. Then humanity revealed its first surprise. Deep inside the human fleet, advanced gravitational weapons activated. Invisible waves swept through the battlefield. Several coalition cruisers suddenly lost control. Their formations collapsed as powerful gravitational distortions pulled vessels away from their positions. Some ships crashed into each other. Others were torn apart by forces their shields could not resist. Coalition commanders stared in disbelief as entire sections of their carefully organized attack formations dissolved into chaos. Before they could react, human warships launched a coordinated counterattack. Precision strikes targeted command vessels, sensor arrays, and communication hubs. Within minutes, several coalition battle groups lost contact with their leaders. Confusion spread rapidly. Human crews moved with remarkable efficiency, executing maneuvers that seemed impossible. Their ships changed formations faster than enemy targeting systems could adjust. Artificial intelligence systems developed in secret programs assisted commanders in making decisions within fractions of a second. Every movement appeared perfectly timed. Every attack struck a vulnerable point. The coalition's confidence began to weaken. Reports from the front lines grew increasingly alarming. Entire squadrons vanished. Battleships thought invincible suffered catastrophic damage. Human forces seemed to anticipate every tactic. Across the galaxy, news channels interrupted normal broadcasts as footage from the battle spread. Citizens who had expected humanity to collapse now watched coalition fleets struggling to advance. On Earth, billions followed the reports with growing hope. In coalition headquarters, however, frustration quickly turned into anger. Senior commanders demanded stronger action. They believed the initial forces had simply underestimated the enemy. To restore momentum, the Varkesh Dominion deployed one of its most feared military formations, the Iron Spear Fleet. This elite force consisted of thousands of heavily armed warships that had crushed numerous civilizations during previous wars. Their arrival boosted coalition morale. Many believed the battle would finally shift in their favor. The commander of the Iron Spear Fleet, a veteran strategist known throughout the galaxy, promised to break human defenses within days. When his fleet entered the conflict, the scale of destruction increased dramatically. Massive battles erupted across multiple star systems. Entire regions of space glowed with weapons fire. Human forces suffered losses for the first time. Several defensive stations were destroyed. Dozens of ships were lost during intense engagements. Yet despite these sacrifices, humanity continued fighting with remarkable discipline. Admiral Kang Day never allowed emotions to influence his decisions. Every retreat, every counterattack, and every defensive stand followed a larger plan. Unknown to coalition leaders, humanity was carefully shaping the battlefield. As the war expanded, President Kim Ji-won authorized the release of selected intelligence reports to neutral worlds. These reports revealed evidence suggesting that the accusations against Earth had been based on false information. While many governments remained skeptical, doubts began spreading throughout the galaxy. Some species questioned whether they had been manipulated into supporting the war. Others demanded independent investigations. Political tensions grew inside the coalition itself. Several member worlds openly criticized the Varkesh Dominion. Still, the fighting continued. Near the Argo frontier, one of the largest battles of the war erupted when coalition forces attempted to break through a key defensive line. More than 10,000 ships participated in the engagement. Human commanders anticipated the attack and prepared an elaborate trap. As coalition vessels advanced, hidden platforms emerged from nearby asteroid clusters. These platforms unleashed powerful electronic warfare systems that disrupted enemy sensors across the entire sector. Navigation systems failed. Communication networks collapsed. Human ships immediately launched coordinated strikes against isolated enemy formations. What began as an offensive quickly turned into a disaster for the coalition. Hundreds of vessels were destroyed within hours. Survivors retreated in confusion. Across military networks, reports of human victories continued accumulating. Confidence within the coalition steadily eroded. Yet Admiral Kang Day remained cautious. He understood that the enemy still possessed overwhelming numbers. Humanity could not afford arrogance. Every success needed to be used carefully. Every battle had to serve a larger purpose. During a strategy meeting aboard the Dawn Shield, Commander Choi Min reviewed intelligence gathered from captured coalition transmissions. The data revealed growing disagreements among enemy commanders. Several coalition governments were questioning the war. Others demanded immediate escalation. Most importantly, the Varkesh Dominion was becoming desperate. Their leaders feared that public support would collapse if the conflict continued much longer. This desperation led them to make a critical mistake. Believing humanity was slowly exhausting its resources, the Varkesh High Command ordered a massive offensive designed to end the war in a single decisive blow. Thousands of coalition ships advanced deep into human territory. The offensive stretched across multiple systems and represented the largest concentration of enemy forces since the war began. To many observers, it appeared that the coalition was finally committing its full strength. News channels across the galaxy focused entirely on the operation. Military analysts predicted a decisive battle. Human forces seemed to retreat before the advance. Defensive positions were abandoned. Several colonies were evacuated. Coalition commanders celebrated what appeared to be a major breakthrough. They believed humanity was finally weakening under constant pressure. What they did not realize was that Admiral Kang Day had anticipated their actions from the very beginning. Every retreat had been intentional. Every abandoned position had served a purpose. For weeks, human forces had slowly guided the enemy deeper into carefully selected regions of space. As coalition fleets pushed forward, they unknowingly moved farther from their supply lines and support networks. They entered sectors where hidden human assets had been waiting for generations. The trap was almost complete. Inside the command center of the Dawn Shield, Admiral Kang Day studied the latest fleet positions. Around him, officers watched the displays in silence. The enemy armada had finally reached the designated zone. Thousands of coalition warships now occupied a vast area surrounded by remote systems that appeared empty on every known star chart. The admiral exchanged a brief glance with Commander Choi Min before issuing a single command. Across hidden communication channels, encrypted orders spread to fleets stationed throughout nearby sectors. Deep within forgotten regions of space, dormant warships activated. Massive formations emerged from concealment behind moons, inside asteroid fields, and beyond uncharted nebulae. One by one, they entered combat readiness. Coalition commanders remained unaware of the danger until long-range sensors began detecting unusual energy signatures. At first, they assumed the readings were technical errors. Then, the number of contacts increased dramatically. Officers rushed to their stations as alarm systems activated across the fleet. New reports flooded command centers. Ships were appearing everywhere. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. Human warships emerged from every direction, surrounding the coalition armada with overwhelming force. Entire sectors that had appeared empty moments earlier suddenly filled with massive formations. The trapped commanders stared at their displays in horror as the true scale of humanity's preparations became clear. They had not broken through Earth's defenses. They had walked directly into the center of a carefully prepared trap. Across the galaxy, military observers watched the sensor feeds in stunned silence. The greatest invasion force ever assembled was now surrounded. And as Admiral Kang Day prepared to launch the next phase of humanity's plan, even the most confident coalition leaders began to fear that the war they started might soon become the greatest disaster in galactic history. The moment the coalition commanders realized they were surrounded, panic spread through their fleet like a storm. Across thousands of warships, alarms echoed through command decks as sensor screens filled with endless formations of human vessels appearing from every direction. Captains who had entered human territory expecting victory suddenly found themselves trapped inside a giant battlefield with no clear path of escape. Some commanders demanded an immediate retreat, while others ordered aggressive attacks to break through the encirclement. The confusion only made the situation worse. Admiral Kang Day watched everything unfold from the bridge of the Dawn Shield. He had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Every movement of the enemy fleet had followed the path he expected. Humanity had allowed the coalition to advance because forcing them deeper into controlled space would expose them to hidden defenses and cut them off from support. Now the trap had closed. Human fleets began moving with precise coordination. Instead of launching reckless assaults, they focused on isolating enemy formations and disrupting communication networks. Coalition battle groups that once fought as a united force suddenly found themselves separated from one another. Command signals became unreliable. Supply lines disappeared. The massive invasion fleet slowly broke into smaller and smaller groups. As the situation deteriorated, news spread throughout the galaxy. Citizens who had once believed humanity stood on the edge of destruction now watched coalition forces struggle to survive. Confidence in the Galactic Council continued to collapse. More governments began demanding answers about how the war had started. Why had Earth been accused without proper investigation? Why had the Council rushed into conflict so quickly? Questions multiplied faster than officials could answer them. At the center of these growing doubts was Leviathan. While the military battles continued, she worked tirelessly with intelligence teams to uncover the truth behind the accusations. Deep inside secure data archives recovered from captured coalition systems, her analysts discovered something shocking. Hidden records connected directly to the Varkesh Dominion showed evidence of a carefully planned deception. False intelligence reports had been created years before the crisis began. Images had been altered. Witness statements had been fabricated. Entire investigations had been manipulated. The accusations against humanity were never based on real evidence. They had been manufactured from the beginning. Lee Hanna immediately brought the information to President Kim Ji-won and Defense Minister Park Jae. The evidence was overwhelming. More importantly, it revealed that humanity was not the first target. Similar operations had been carried out against other civilizations in the past. Several species that mysteriously disappeared from galactic history had likely been destroyed after being falsely labeled as threats. The realization sent chills through everyone who reviewed the files. The Varkesh Dominion had been using fear and misinformation as weapons for generations. President Kim Ji-won made a difficult decision. Rather than keeping the discovery secret until the war ended, she ordered the evidence released to the entire galaxy. Massive data transmissions spread through public networks, government systems, and independent media channels. Within hours, billions of people were reviewing the files for themselves. The reaction was immediate. Anger erupted across coalition worlds. Citizens demanded explanations from their leaders. Protests filled major cities. Government officials who had supported the war faced growing public outrage. Several coalition members announced they were withdrawing their forces. Others suspended military operations while launching internal investigations. The unity that had once driven the invasion began falling apart. Inside the Varkesh Dominion, however, leaders refused to surrender. Their ruler, Supreme Chancellor Varek, understood that the release of the evidence threatened everything his government had built. If the truth fully spread, the Dominion's influence would collapse. Determined to avoid that outcome, he ordered his remaining military forces to continue fighting regardless of the consequences. Thousands of loyal warships received new orders. The war would continue until humanity was destroyed. Yet even among Varkesh officers, loyalty was beginning to weaken. Many commanders had lost faith in their leaders. Some openly questioned the war. Others quietly refused aggressive orders. The cracks inside the Dominion were growing larger every day. Meanwhile, humanity launched a new operation. Rather than targeting civilian worlds, Admiral Kang Day focused exclusively on military infrastructure. Human fleets struck shipyards, weapons factories, supply depots, and command stations used by the Dominion. Every attack was carefully planned to minimize civilian casualties. This decision surprised many observers. Humanity now possessed the advantage. They could have sought revenge for the attempted destruction of Earth. Instead, they demonstrated restraint. Across the galaxy, former critics began viewing humanity differently. They saw a civilization that fought fiercely when threatened but refused to become the monster its enemies claimed it was. As human forces advanced deeper into Dominion territory, Commander Choi Min led several successful operations against key military targets. His fleets disabled orbital defenses and captured strategic locations without unnecessary destruction. Local populations often watched in disbelief as human soldiers distributed aid and medical assistance after battles ended. The contrast between human actions and Dominion propaganda became impossible to ignore. Support for the war continued collapsing. More coalition governments announced formal withdrawals. Entire fleets left the battlefield. Some even began sharing intelligence with Earth in exchange for peace agreements. What had started as a united effort to destroy humanity was rapidly becoming a political disaster for those who initiated it. Yet despite these victories, Admiral Kang Day remained concerned. Intelligence reports suggested that the Dominion still possessed secrets hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Captured officials spoke of classified projects and emergency plans. Most troubling were references to something called the Final Shield. No one seemed willing to explain exactly what it was. The few individuals who knew details either disappeared or died before they could be questioned. This mystery became the focus of Lee Hanna's intelligence teams. Working around the clock, they searched through captured databases and intercepted communications. Eventually, they found fragments of information buried inside highly encrypted files. What they uncovered alarmed everyone involved. Decades earlier, the Dominion had discovered ancient technology left behind by a civilization that existed long before the current galactic powers. Much of the technology remained poorly understood, but one project appeared especially dangerous. Records described a massive weapon capable of releasing enough energy to destroy entire star systems. Unlike conventional weapons, this device could trigger catastrophic reactions within stars themselves. If activated near a populated system, billions could die within hours. The implications were horrifying. President Kim Ji-won immediately ordered further investigation. More intelligence arrived over the following days. The reports confirmed the worst fears. The weapon was real. Construction had been completed years earlier inside a heavily fortified region of Dominion space. The project remained secret because even many Dominion officials considered it too dangerous to use. Yet as the war turned against them, Supreme Chancellor Varek appeared willing to take any action necessary to preserve his power. Admiral Kang Day understood the threat immediately. Humanity's victories would mean nothing if such a weapon were activated. He ordered fleet commanders to accelerate operations throughout the region. Every available intelligence asset focused on locating the superweapon before it could be deployed. Human forces pushed forward, capturing strategic positions at a rapid pace. Resistance weakened as more Dominion personnel surrendered. However, time was running out. Intercepted communications suggested emergency preparations were already underway. Deep inside the Dominion capital, Chancellor Varric met with his remaining loyal advisors. Reports of military defeats covered the walls around him. Entire fleets had been destroyed or captured. Former allies were abandoning the war. Public unrest spread across multiple worlds. Yet despite the growing crisis, Varric showed no intention of surrendering. Instead, he authorized the activation sequence for the ancient weapon. If the Dominion could not maintain control of the galaxy, he reasoned, then no one else would either. Far away, aboard the Dawn Shield, urgent alerts suddenly appeared across command displays. Intelligence teams had finally identified the location of the weapon. The information arrived together with another troubling report. Activation procedures had already begun. The countdown was underway. A tense silence filled the command center as officers reviewed the data. Humanity had won the war on the battlefield, but a far greater danger now threatened the entire galaxy. Admiral Kong Day looked at the holographic display showing the distant fortress where the weapon was hidden. Around him, commanders waited for instructions. President Kim Ji-won joined the secure communication channel from Earth. The decision facing them would determine the future of countless worlds. After a brief moment of thought, the Admiral issued new orders. Human fleets immediately changed course and accelerated toward Dominion space. The final battle was about to begin, and somewhere beyond the stars, an ancient weapon capable of destroying entire systems was slowly awakening. As humanity's fleets accelerated toward the heart of the Varkesh Dominion, tension spread across the galaxy. The war that had begun with Earth's planned destruction was now approaching its final and most dangerous stage. Every major news network followed the developing crisis. Billions of people watched live updates as reports confirmed the existence of the ancient superweapon hidden deep inside Dominion territory. Fear spread rapidly. Entire governments activated emergency plans. Civilian ships fled from nearby systems. No one knew whether humanity could reach the weapon before it was activated. If the device worked as intelligence reports suggested, entire star systems could vanish in a matter of hours. On the bridge of the Dawn Shield, Admiral Kong Day studied the latest tactical information. Around him, officers worked continuously as human fleets crossed system after system at maximum speed. Commander Choi Min coordinated advance units moving ahead of the main force, while Lee Hanna remained in contact with governments throughout the galaxy, urging them to support the effort to stop the weapon. Even former coalition members now shared intelligence with Earth. The truth about the war had changed everything. Species that once feared humanity now recognized the greater threat posed by the Dominion's leadership. Yet despite the growing support, time remained dangerously short. Intercepted communications revealed that Supreme Chancellor Varric had ordered full activation of the weapon. The countdown had already entered its final stages. As human forces approached Dominion space, they encountered fierce resistance. Loyal Varkesh commanders gathered every remaining warship they could find and positioned them around the heavily fortified fortress where the ancient weapon was hidden. Thousands of ships formed defensive layers around the installation. Massive orbital cannons covered every possible approach. Minefields stretched across entire sectors. It was clear that Varric intended to buy enough time for the activation sequence to finish. The final battle began the moment human fleets entered the region. Space erupted with light as thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. Human destroyers raced through defensive formations while larger battleships exchanged devastating attacks with Dominion warships. Explosions illuminated entire sections of space. Several human vessels were destroyed during the opening engagement, but the fleet continued advancing. Admiral Kong Day understood that every minute mattered. Victory was no longer measured by territory or enemy losses. The only objective was reaching the weapon before it could be used. Across the battlefield, Commander Choi Min led one of the most dangerous operations of the war. His task force pushed directly toward the fortress while under constant attack. Enemy ships attempted to block every route. Several times his formation nearly became trapped. Yet the human crews continued fighting with determination. They knew billions of lives depended on their success. Back on Earth, President Kim Ji-won addressed the public. She remained calm despite the uncertainty surrounding the mission. Her message focused not on fear but on unity. She reminded citizens that humanity had survived because it refused to surrender when facing impossible odds. Across Earth and countless allied worlds, people listened closely. Many feared the coming hours might decide the future of the galaxy itself. Deep inside the Dominion capital, Chancellor Varric watched battle reports arrive one after another. The situation around him continued worsening. More military commanders surrendered. Entire fleets abandoned their positions. Public protests filled major cities. Yet Varric refused to accept defeat. He believed that activating the weapon would restore his power through fear. If entire systems could be destroyed at will, no government would dare oppose him. Surrounded by a shrinking circle of loyal followers, he ordered the countdown to continue regardless of the consequences. Meanwhile, Lee Hanna and her intelligence teams uncovered one final secret hidden within captured Dominion archives. The ancient weapon contained a central control network vulnerable to disruption if a direct connection could be established. However, reaching that network required entering the fortress itself. The information immediately reached Admiral Kang Dae. Without hesitation, he approved a special mission. A small team would infiltrate the fortress while the fleet continued fighting outside. The mission would be extremely dangerous, but it offered the best chance of stopping the weapon before activation. The infiltration team included experienced officers, engineers, and security specialists led by Captain Han Soo. Their transport vessel slipped through the battle under heavy escort. Several times enemy defenses nearly destroyed them, but they eventually reached the outer structure of the fortress. Once inside, the team moved quickly through heavily guarded corridors. Every minute brought the countdown closer to completion. Outside, the battle intensified. Human fleets finally broke through the outer defensive layers and reached firing range of the fortress. Massive exchanges of fire shook the region. Dominion defenses suffered severe damage, but they continued fighting fiercely. Admiral Kang Dae personally directed fleet movements from the Dawn Shield, constantly adjusting strategies as conditions changed. Despite the chaos, human forces steadily pushed forward. Inside the fortress, Captain Han Soo's team encountered heavy resistance. Security forces guarded every major access point. Several intense firefights erupted as the team advanced deeper into the structure. Casualties mounted on both sides. Yet the team refused to stop. They understood what failure would mean. After a difficult struggle, they finally reached the central control chamber. What they found confirmed the intelligence reports. The ancient weapon was enormous. Energy surged through systems built by a civilization long lost to history. Warning indicators showed activation approaching rapidly. With only minutes remaining, the engineers immediately began working to disable the device. Unfortunately, the process proved far more complicated than expected. Ancient safeguards resisted every attempt to shut the system down. Outside the chamber, additional security forces closed in. Time was running out. As the countdown approached its final moments, Captain Han Soo made a difficult decision. Instead of attempting a complete shutdown, the team focused on disrupting the weapon's core synchronization systems. It was a risky plan. Success could disable the weapon. Failure might trigger an unstable reaction. Working under extreme pressure, the engineers rewrote control sequences while security personnel held off incoming defenders. Then, with only seconds remaining, the synchronization network collapsed. Throughout the fortress, alarms erupted. Energy flows destabilized. The activation sequence abruptly stopped. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations confirmed the same result. The weapon had been neutralized. A wave of relief spread through human fleets and allied governments alike. The greatest threat in known space was finally gone. Outside the fortress, Dominion resistance collapsed almost immediately. Commanders who had continued fighting lost all hope. Thousands of ships surrendered. Others powered down their weapons and accepted capture. The war was effectively over. Human forces secured the fortress and arrested Chancellor Varric along with the remaining members of his leadership circle. Shortly afterward, the full truth behind the conflict was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Evidence of the fabricated accusations, political manipulation, and secret destruction of innocent civilizations became public knowledge. The revelations shocked billions. The Galactic Council, already weakened by scandal and failure, quickly lost legitimacy. Member worlds demanded major reforms. Several officials resigned. New political movements emerged calling for transparency and cooperation among species. Through it all, humanity held a position of overwhelming military strength. Their hidden fleets remained unmatched. Their victories had proven their capabilities beyond question. Yet rather than seeking domination, President Kim Ji-won chose a different path. Human fleets withdrew from occupied territories after securing peace agreements. Reconstruction aid was offered to damaged worlds regardless of which side they had supported during the war. Former enemies were treated with fairness. This decision earned respect across the galaxy. Over the following years, new alliances formed. Trade routes reopened. Cooperation replaced fear. Humanity helped create a new interstellar organization designed to prevent future abuses of power. The memory of the war remained painful, but it also served as a lesson. Generations later, young cadets from dozens of species studied together aboard a massive academy station orbiting a peaceful world. They learned about the conflict that nearly destroyed the galaxy and about the people who stopped it. They learned how Earth had been marked for destruction, how humanity's deadliest warships had appeared when all hope seemed lost, and how victory had ultimately come not from superior weapons alone, but from courage, preparation, unity, and restraint. As the cadets looked out through the station's observation windows at the stars beyond, they understood the lesson history had left behind. Humanity had become one of the most respected powers in the galaxy not because it could win wars, but because after winning it chose peace. And far away, resting silently in hidden shipyards that no longer needed to fear the future, the legendary fleets of Protocol Leviathan stood watch over a galaxy that had finally learned the true strength of Earth.